Hey everybody, Burden here from Addict Gaming, and today I'm going to show you a great roaming build in World vs. World and SPVP with the Thief using a sword and dagger weapon set. Okay guys, so let's do a quick overview of the build, talk about how the build plays, and you can watch the build footage while I'm talking about it. If you've seen my Disable Support Thief build, it plays a lot like that. That build also uses sword and dagger, and that one was a little more on disabling a person in a fight and making sure they don't do much. This one is a lot more about damage, tons of evasion, and also one of the things that I really love about this build is the boon stripping and spreading idea. Now, if we talk about our damage, the sword auto attack damage is very high. We're going to get a ton of damage out of that. That's how we do most of our damage. It also cleaves as well, which is very important. So if we're fighting on a point, we're going to be hitting multiple enemies. We get Thrill of the Crime, which is a trait. When we use our steel, we gain Might, Fury, and Swiftness. And the Fury puts our crit chance almost to 70%. So we're gonna be hurting people quite a bit in this build. We are in full Berserkers, by the way. And then there is might stacking in this build. We get might when we dodge from Power of Inertia, and we're going to be dodging a ton in this build. And with the boon stripping, if a person has like 25 stacks of might, you could just rip that from them. So the damage in this build is pretty insane. Now saying that, you would assume that we're very squishy, and that leads into survivability in this build, and it's pretty cool. It's a lot of evasion, a lot of dodging, and we get a lot of vigor uptime and endurance, just gaining our endurance back, so we can dodge. So if you were standing still and somebody's hitting you, you'd probably die in like 3 hits if like a Berserker build was hitting you. So the thing about this is we have to be extremely active in this build with dodging and with the evasion that we have in this build, because you just can't stand around and get hit. So we have a few ways that we get more evasion in this build, which leads into our survivability. We have 13 seconds of vigor when we use steel. That's because we have the bountiful theft trait. We also get 6 seconds of vigor when we heal because of the vigorous recovery trait. And we also have an evade on attack built into our sword, which is flanking strike. That's the dual wield ability with the sword and dagger. And then we have the Signet of Agility, which completely restores our endurance. So if we're completely out of endurance, then we can use Signet of Agility and get all of our endurance back. So we have, you can dodge 6-7 times in this build straight, pretty much. Now the next part is the boon stripping and spreading, and I really love this kind of mechanic in builds. Now we have 2 ways in this build to boon strip and boon spread. The first one is Larcenous Strike. That's the combo that's paired in with the Flanking Strike with the dual wield with the sword dagger. And that steals 1 boon and gives it to you. So if you see somebody with like stability, that's probably the one I always target. Is if I see somebody with stability, I'm trying to grab that stability boon because it's very powerful. But that steals 1 boon and gives it to ourselves. And then we have Bountiful Theft, which is a trait, and that steals 2 boons. This is the same one that gives us vigor, but it also steals 2 boons on the enemy target, and then we give that to all of our allies around us. That's with a maximum of 5. So we can spread it up to 5 people. Now if we go into condition removal, we actually have a decent amount of condition removal. It's a little more involved to remove conditions in this build compared to other builds, like the Guardian and the Ranger. They have certain traits and utilities that can remove conditions every 10 seconds. But this one we have Infiltrator's Strike and Infiltrator's Return on the sword, which we teleport to the target and immobilize them. Then we can use it again. That's Infiltrator's Return. We go back to where we were when we used Infiltrator's Strike, and then that removes 1 condition from us. So it's a little more involved, but you can use it as much as you want, as long as you have the initiative for it. So there's no cooldown or anything with that. We also have the Signet of Agility, the one that restores all of our endurance. When it restores all of our endurance, it also removes one condition on us for every nearby ally, up to a maximum number of 5. So if we're around our whole team in SPVP, then we could actually remove 5 conditions on us. The last thing I want to talk about with this build is the crowd control aspect of it, because we do have a lot of days, almost an unlimited amount of days. We have Sleight of Hand, which is a trait. When we steal from somebody, we actually daze them. So that's one CC that we have. And then we have Tactical Strike, which is the auto attack on the sword. So when we're in stealth, then it's going to be Tactical Strike instead of the regular sword auto attack. And that dazes a target for 2 seconds. So if you hit somebody while you're in stealth, you hit somebody while they're stealing or something like, or healing, and then you can interrupt that and daze them for a couple of seconds. So like I said, we don't go into stealth a lot in this build. We do a little bit, but it's definitely a good thing to go into stealth when you can with the Cloak and Dagger to daze targets. It's just for some more crowd control. And the last one we have is Basilisk Venom, which is our elite, and that turns somebody into stone for 1.5 seconds. So here are our stats and our equipment for the PvP build. It's the same thing for World versus World. We are using the Berserker Amulet in PvP. Remember, if you want to imitate the Berserker Amulet with your PvE stats, you need to get Valkyrie's Armor. You have to either craft that or have somebody else craft it for you, or you can buy it from the trading post. And then everything else is Berserker stats. So your weapons, your rings, accessories, your amulet, and your back piece would be all Berserkers, and then your armor is Valkyries. And that will imitate the stats on the Berserker Amulet in PvP. For the runes, we have Runes of Strength. Now, of course, we can use this in PvP because it's free. If you want to use this in PvE, it's very expensive. So you might want to go with something like Rune of Holbrack, where you still get the Might Duration. You're not going to get as much Might Duration. You can see the Runes of Strength have 45% Might Duration, and the Runes of Holbrack have 30% Might Duration. And you also lose the 5% damage while under the effects of Might. But the Runes of Holbrack does have the minus 20% condition duration applied to you. But if you're in PvE, and you want to do World versus World, and Runes of Strength are so expensive that I know a lot of people can't afford that. So you might want to look at something like Runes of Holbrack, something that gives you that Might Duration, because we will be stacking some Might with our dodging. Now for the traits, for the sigils, we have Sigil of Energy on both weapon sets. Our weapon sets are Sword, Dagger, and then Shortbow. Now we want Sigil of Energy because we want to be dodging as much as we possibly can to gain that Might and for damage mitigation. So we have Sigil of Energy on each weapon set. Then we have Sigil of Fire on each weapon set. That'll give us just a more burst, a little more oomph in our burst, and it'll give us that extra damage. That's also AoE, along with our sword that cleaves and does AoE as well. Okay guys, let's go over our traits. We have 2 in Deadly Arts. We have Serpent's Touch. Stealing inflicts poison. That's the 11 seconds of poison. Now we're not going to get a lot of damage out of the poison, but the minus 33% heal effectiveness is very strong. And our steal is on a 21 second cooldown, so 11 seconds out of every 21 seconds we will have poison on the target. Then we have Mug. Deal damage and gain life when stealing. This attack cannot critically hit enemies, so every 21 seconds we're going to get that 2000 heal, and then do a little bit of damage with it as well, just adding to our overall burst damage. In Acrobatics, this line is going to deal a lot with the dodging mechanic of this build, so getting boons with dodging and getting endurance back and things like that. Expeditious Dodger, gains swiftness upon dodging. This helps if you love roaming in SPVP or World versus World. This will help you get around the battlefield a little bit faster and get from point to point faster. Power of Inertia, this is where we are going to be stacking our Might. We gain Might for 26.25 seconds every time we dodge. So we're not going to be stacking Might crazily like the Axe Shield Longbow Warrior or like a Double Dagger Ellie, but we are going to get a decent stack of Might, and we will be stealing Might from other people as well. Feline Grace, dodging returns some of the endurance used, so dodging costs less for us. so we are just able to dodge more. Vigorous Recovery, gain vigor when using a healing skill. Now that's 6.5 seconds of vigor, and that's one of the biggest reasons why we bring Withdrawal, because Withdrawal cures immobilized, chilled, and crippled, so any kind of CC condition we remove when we use Withdrawal. We also get the 6.5 seconds of vigor on a 15-second cooldown, and then we get a nice little evade from it as well. So you can see a lot of the synergy working in this build so far. Then there's Fluid Strikes. Damage is increased while endurance is not full, and I can pretty much guarantee you that your endurance will never be full. So it's pretty much like a permanent 10% damage increase to this build. And then we have Pain Response. Gain regeneration and remove conditions when struck while your health is below the threshold. The threshold is 75%. We remove bleeding, burning, and poison, which are 3 extremely hard-hitting conditions in a condition build. So with Pain Response and with Withdrawal, we can remove 6 conditions from us. Trickery, this trait line is going to deal a lot with the stealing aspect of this build, so it's going to buff up our steal a little more, give us some boons when we steal as well. Kleptomaniac, stealing gives you initiative. We get 2 initiative when we steal. Now, this plus Preparedness increases maximum initiative by 3. It's just going to let us use our sword skills a lot more, like Flanking Strike and Larcenous Strike, which would cost 5 initiative. And Infiltrator's Strike and Infiltrator's Return, which would also cost 5 initiative. And then our Cloak and Dagger as well, which costs 6 initiative. So there's some of these skills are a little pricey in initiative, so these little minor traits are really going to help us out to keep our initiative up a little bit. Then we have Thrill of the Crime. When you steal, you and all nearby allies gain Fury, Might, and Swiftness for 10 seconds. Now because we have the boon duration in Acrobatics, we're actually getting 13 seconds of Fury, 13 seconds of Swiftness, and 17.5 seconds of Might because we have the Runes of Strength on as well. Bountiful Theft. Stealing grants you and all nearby allies Vigor. So that's 13 seconds of Vigor. And our steal is on a 21-second cooldown, so that's 13 seconds out of 21 seconds. And on top of our Vigorous Recovery, we're going to be having Vigor pretty much the whole time we're fighting. That's 19 seconds out of 21 seconds, pretty much. And then we steal 2 boons, and we spread it to our nearby allies. So, try to target people with Protection or Stability, one of those really strong boons, so you could give it to you and your nearby allies as well. Lead Attacks increases damage per initiative. Now, our initiative will be yo-yoing it quite a bit. So it's usually not that high, but you can still say you could get 5 or 6% damage initiative out of this. And when you're first doing your burst, you're gonna have full initiative, so you're gonna be getting a lot more damage right at the beginning. And then we have Sleight of Hand. Stealing also dazes the target and reduces the recharge of steal. Now, without Sleight of Hand, the steal recharge would be 27 seconds because we do have the steal recharge rate from Trickery. And then, since we do have Sleight of the Hand, it goes down to 21.5 seconds of a cooldown. So those are our traits. I hope you can see a lot of the synergy happening in this build. And if you have any comments or questions, then make sure you leave them in the comment section below. Let's go over our skills in the build, and we will be done with this video. Now, I just want to say that I put a lot of extensive research into this build. I looked at a lot of variants of the build and what people like to use, and I really just think this is the most solid one. So you can always change something if you don't like it, but I really feel like this is the most solid setup for this build. So let's look at our steal. Now you can see how many things we get with our steal through our traits. We do damage from Mug, so we get the 1000 plus damage from it. We steal 2 boons from the enemy and spread it to ourselves and our allies. We also get the healing from steal. We apply 11 seconds of poison. We also daze the target for 1 second. And we gain 13 seconds of fury, 17.5 seconds of might, 13 seconds of swiftness, and 13 seconds of vigor. And we also get 2 initiatives. So the build relies heavily around steal. Just stealing and dodging pretty much. So we're going to get a ton of things when we steal from somebody. And it's on a 21-second cooldown instead of 30 seconds now. Let's look at our auto attack on our sword. This is where we are going to be doing the most damage in our build. So we have Slice, Slash, which are basically the same attacks, just with different names. And then we have Crippling Strike. Now, you're going to really want to hit with your Crippling Strike because it does the most damage with the auto attack. It also applies a cripple and weakness, making our next auto attack chains much easier to hit when they're slowed down. The second thing we have is Tactical Strike, which is in our stealth, just like the backstab with the dagger. Now, if we are in stealth and we hit somebody from behind, we are going to daze them for 1.5 seconds. If we are just attacking from the front or the sides, then we are going to apply a 5.5 second blind instead. The second ability in the sword is Infiltrator's Strike and Infiltrator's Return. This has a few very useful purposes. The Infiltrator's Strike allows us to teleport to the target and immobilize them for 1 second, making our auto attack chain much easier to hit. And then we have Infiltrator's Return, which cures a condition from us when we return. So that's some good condition cleanse. Now, a few other things is, if we teleport to somebody with Infiltrator's Strike and we're attacking and they throw down AoEs, we could always use Infiltrator's Return as a way to get out of AoEs. So make sure you're always putting it down, but just be careful of how much initiative you're using with it as well. And it really just adds to the overall confusion you are going to be giving to a person, because this is a build where you are going to be teleporting around a lot, you're going to be dodging a lot, you're going to be evading a ton of attacks, and some people just end up getting really confused by it and they really don't know how to respond to it. The third ability we have on the sword is Flanking Strike. Now this gives us the evade, and does a decent amount of damage. Then it unlocks Larcenous Strike, where we can steal a boon from a target and give it to ourselves. So if you see an Elementalist pop Armor of Earth, then you can do a few Larcenous Strikes on them, steal their protection, steal their stability, and really turn the tide of the battle. The fourth ability we have is Dancing Dagger. This is probably my least used skill, just because I already spent so much initiative, I don't like to spend a whole lot more. But if you're having trouble catching up to somebody, you could always throw a Dancing Dagger. Although in this build, you can always just use Infiltrator's Strike to catch up to a person. The nice thing about Infiltrator's Strike as well is that you don't have to be in range of a target, and you can still use it, and it'll still teleport you closer. So it's not like a steal. If you try to use steal when you're out of range, it's just going to cancel the steal, and then it'll put it on a little short cooldown. But if you use Infiltrator's Strike, it doesn't matter if you're out of range, it's going to teleport you closer. The fifth ability we have is Cloak and Dagger. This is where we're going to be able to pop in stealth, and it does a decent amount of damage as well. That was about 1500. There's a few tricks you want to learn with Cloak and Dagger, and that has to do with steal, and also our Infiltrator Signet, which is also a Shadow Step. We can use Cloak and Dagger, and then as soon as we use Cloak and Dagger, we can use steal, so we can teleport to the target, get all the benefits from steal, and then it'll put us into stealth. So I used Cloak and Dagger, and then I used steal right away. By the time I got to the target, my Cloak and Dagger the animation was just finishing, so it hit the target. You could do the same exact thing with the Infiltrator Signet with the Cloak and Dagger. Use Infiltrator Signet and then, Cloak and Dagger, then use Infiltrator Signet right away. And you will pop into stealth as well. You can't do it with Infiltrator Strike, unfortunately, because it'll cancel the, see, it just does it right after the Cloak and Dagger. It doesn't actually, the Cloak and Dagger animation doesn't carry through. So it finishes your Cloak and Dagger, then uses the Infiltrator Strike instead. So if we look at our short bow, I'm not going to go over the short bow too much because you don't use it a lot, but there are certainly a few good reasons to use it. The biggest reason I use the short bow is if I'm going against a character that is full melee and they have no ranged weapons, specifically thinking of like a hammer warrior, and you don't want to be stunned or CC'd by a hammer warrior or like a hammer guardian, so you have disabling shot, which shoots you back and it evades. It's a very good way to get away from people. And you also have your Infiltrator's Arrow, where you can teleport around the map. And if you're just in a dicey situation, you're trying to fight over a point and there are too many people there, that's a great time to pull out your short bow, take a few steps back, and start throwing down your AoEs on a point and not having to be on that point taking damage. Our heal is Withdrawal. Roll back while healing and evade attacks, cures immobilized, chilled, and crippled. And we also get the 6.5 seconds of Vigor from our trait when we use our healing skill. We also have Infiltrator Signet, which we went over a little bit. It regenerates 1 extra initiative every 10 seconds, and it's a Shadow Step. And this is our stun breaker in the build. So if you get stunned, make sure you use that right away to pop out of that CC. This is a build you just really don't want to be CC'd in, so make sure you use that as soon as you're CC'd. Then we have Signet of Agility. It grants increased precision, which puts our crit chance up to about 43%. And then it also refills endurance, so if we're completely out of endurance, then we can use Signet of Agility. It completely restores our endurance, and it cures one condition for each nearby ally. So if we have 5 allies near us, we can use this and we will cleanse 5 conditions with this ability. Then we have Shadow's Refuge. This is a very difficult skill to pass up on just because it's so strong. Throw it down and it puts us and everybody in it in stealth. Gives us a little bit of healing. And you can either use it for trying to escape from a situation or just to wait for your cooldowns a little bit. And I like to usually throw my Basilisk Venom on when I'm in the stealth from Shadow's Refuge, then steal to a target, and then start bursting again. So that leads us to the Basilisk Venom, which is Venom on a 45-second cooldown, a stone duration of 1.5 seconds. This really helps you with your initial burst. Now remember, if our endurance isn't full, we get a damage increase. So before I actually attack a target, I will dodge once, so my endurance isn't full. You can do the Cloak and Dagger and Steal, and then they're stunned. Their health is already like halfway because they're stunned and you were able to land your burst skills on them. So anyway, I think that about does it with all of our skills. If you have any questions about the skills, then please leave it in the comments below and I will be sure to get back to you and answer your questions. Before we end this video, I would just like to say thank you for watching this build video. Thank you all for your continuous support of Addict Gaming. If there's any sort of content you would like to see from us, let us know in the comments below and we will look into doing that. Thanks for watching. Variation of the build to fit my playstyle. I encourage you guys to do the same. Whenever you see a build video or you look at a build, always keep in mind your playstyle, and you can always make changes here and there to a build. You don't have to follow it verbatim. So I would encourage you guys to do the same thing. That's what I like to do as well. So this build takes advantage